Jesus. I ain't following Josh anymore. That was Christ. Thanks for distilling the essence of the why. We'll be talking a little bit about the how, maybe a little bit about the what, but thank you for reminding us about the why. And I know Antonio did a wonderful job of doing that as well. This is about you. This is about us. This is about the community. This is about, addressing the issue of our time, those here and then everybody else, and minding that gap. We're not just a state that focuses on the top line growth. We're a state that commits ourselves every single day to doing more and better on the issue of inclusion. And foundationally and fundamentally, the issues that bring all of us here today are around that paradigm, around that fundamental value, and a core of the work that we're doing and advancing here today with the 11 bills that we'll be introducing, trailer bills to the legislature, and an executive order that has 8 fundamental principles. At the core of that is represented, Josh, in your life story, in your recognition, your brothers and sisters in labor, and in the work that Antonio Villaraigosa has been doing for decades, and the work he certainly did as mayor and speaker of the California Assembly. So I'm honored to be here with that as the table setting for this opportunity to move in a new direction, to recognize the urgency of the moment we're living in, and to recognize that urgency is not just around climate change, it's around trust. That urgency is around actually delivering on what we promote and promise. Exactly. That urgency is around reconciling the fact that people are increasingly, a lot of us, not only distrustful, but we're just frankly, we're fed up with everything we're hearing on TV and all the things that are being promoted, and yet we're not seeing the results. You see it around the rest of the world and you go, what the hell is going on in the United States? You see that frustration magnified in people saying, I'm not voting, I ain't getting involved. I'm done, I don't trust institutions. I don't trust politicians anymore. And I hear that all the time. Why is it taking so long? Mm-hmm. I mean, the mayor just talked about as we were walking up projects that he announced that literally are just being he didn't say that there wasn't that damn, ribbon cutting. There were hard outs there with shovels because it took 10 years just to process and to organize a permitting and procurement framework. And so we've got to do more and we've got to do better. And that's foundationally the work that we're advancing here today, a recognition of the sense of urgency to deliver on results and to build. We have opportunity to do something, and this is, I think, a contextualization that I hope everyone can embrace, to do something we haven't done since the 50s and 60s in the state of California. We have $180 billion that we've already identified of money that will be flowing into the state or created within this state through SB 1 and other programs that will create the largest infrastructure investments, arguably on par with those days that helped build the great middle class in the state of California and America, those days that were represented in the 50s and 60s. In fact, on a dollar-for-dollar basis, we think we're not only on par, we think that $180 billion actually eclipse those days in the 50s and 60s. That's how serious this moment is.
Break the glass.
So the question is, are we going to screw it up by being consumed by paralysis and process? And clearly, we're here to assert a different paradigm, to commit ourselves to results and to prove that we can actually do more with taxpayer money and to make sure that our values are protected and preserved at the same time. We're not looking to roll over anybody. We're not looking to roll over local communities. We're not looking to roll over environmental stewardship and those that are out there as fierce champions. And we sure as hell ain't ever going to roll over folks and the laborers and the carpenters and folks at IBEW and OE3 and all of our brothers and sisters and laborers. And so we're striking that balance. We've been working on this now for over a year. Antonio came on board as our infrastructure czar in August of last year. We announced our framework of consideration, and here we are, just since August of last year, where the report he and Michael and his team put out, California Forward, they put it out yesterday, laying out detailed vision. And the day after that vision is laid out, we're laying out specific language that, Senator, we are introducing to you and your colleagues for consideration as trailer bills to move this forward. You heard things like progressive design build. You heard things like frameworks around direct contracting or local contracting. You heard frameworks around judicial review and just permitting reform generally, Administrative Records Act reform, efforts that we need to advance as it relates to green financing. All of those are laid out in detail, and it's simple. It's about saving time and saving money and addressing bureaucratic malaise. And let me give you a specific proof point. We have a project, the Water Fix, that has an environmental document. I'm not making this up. I wish I brought it, but you couldn't. I mean, this could have been a whole forest, and we'd have to have actually eliminated all the trees. 289,000 pages. I mean, who the hell has ever read that except ChatGPT? I mean, no human being in the world has read that except lawyers and special interests that are there to manipulate a process. I mean, it's just ridiculous. Honestly, it's ridiculous that we've come to accept that and normalize that. And so part of the administrative records reform is to fundamentally address that. Antonio talked about the work we're doing as it relates to broadband. I mean, this is one of the foundational issues of our time, to connect rural Californians. I mean, what more exposure did we have during the pandemic of that digital divide? And yet things were taking 33 months that we know only have to take 11 months. We actually want to get it down ultimately to 6 months. But we've already made real progress in terms of advancing these goals. So there's ways of doing things better and doing things more efficiently. So that's the balance in this proposal. As the mayor said, rightfully so, we've got work to do. We've got to get this done with the legislature. But I want to thank the legislature, because over the last few years, I've had the privilege, just as governor, in 4 years, to sign 20 secret reform bills that were not done to anyone, were done with everybody that are here. We were able to get across the finish line because we were inclusive and we had two-way conversations and we addressed people's issues. But the issue that was highlighted by the mayor is an issue I want to reinforce before I sign this executive order and we open up to questions. And that is, we've been doing a lot of this for a long time, a lot of what we are laying out in these 11 principles. But we were doing them for stadiums. And I love sports. I take a back knee to nobody on sports. But I also love roads. I love transit. I love bridges. I love clean energy projects like the one we're seeing here. It's not just about stadiums. That's exactly right. And we've proven we can get it done for stadiums. So why the hell can't we translate that to all these other projects? And that's exactly the question we asked ourselves, and it's the question we have answered with this bill package that we're introducing here today. So with no further ado, let me sign a component part of that. And that's this executive order, if we've got it right here. And now, the former speaker doesn't like executive orders as much as the governor likes executive orders, because you can just get things done with a simple pen and paper.
When I was mayor, I loved them.
Yeah, with mayor, he loved them. And as speaker, and the senator is like, well, let me take a look at that. But this executive order is important because, as the mayor said, we are reorganizing government and reorienting government to a focus on results and transparency. We'll be putting out in a couple months. I've seen it. It's in beta. It's amazing. For the first time ever, we have a dashboard that lays out in detail all the funding sources, the project point person, the timelines that we originally set forth, the timelines that are currently projected, a transparent document that allows anyone to go online and determine exactly where that project is. So I'll give you an example. Where are we with sites? We all talk about sites. Well, we now know with detail and specificity. By the way, sites will be a beneficiary of these 11 reforms. And we will be able to communicate that not just internally, but externally. Everybody will have the capacity now to understand where this state is. That has been a more challenging process than you think. Just the funding sources, they get complex and they're nuanced, and we want to make sure it's accurate. But that's one of the principles that are being laid out in this executive order. We have 8 strike teams. We organize them around broadband and clean energy and hydrogen. We've organized them around issues that we hold dear as it relates to our clean energy transition, but more traditional infrastructure projects that also will be oriented differently as well. So I'm really excited about this. This was an all-of-government effort. This was something the mayor and I talked about over a year ago, and it's nice to be in a position here today to actually make this real with a simple pen and this piece of paper.
Whoa.
So we got that done.
There you go.
Thank you, sir.
Love it, man. I I love it.
And those 11 pieces of legislation are on their way to the legislature, Senator. I appreciate you being here, supervisors. Thank you for your local leadership. As the senator said, there's no substitute for localism. It is determinative. State's vision is realized locally. And I realize as well, Josh, how powerful, potent, and important this community is in particular as it relates to the fate and future and transition in the state of California. So thank you for your leadership. With that, we're here to answer any questions.
Hey, Governor. Wes Van Tyscher with Politico. Why are you pursuing these changes through the trailer bill process rather than through standard policy legislation? And related, can you talk a little bit about how these changes will interface with the roughly dozen bills that have been introduced on these things?
I think people are less, people just want to see results. They want to see progress. That's a process question. I think that's actually, it's been in that process frame that's actually created the problems that we're trying to actually resolve and fix. I think the spirit of collaboration and partnership with the legislature has been demonstrable, not only those 20 CEQA reform bills, but what we did last year as it relates to centralized procurement with the CEC, which was a big deal for green energy projects. And the legislature was insistent on that, the work we're doing on energy reliability in that space. There was a sense of urgency last year, and the legislature made their mark in terms of advancing those efforts. So I think it's in that spirit that's already defined with that spirit of urgency that we want to bring into the trailer bill process. All these things are very familiar, as I said, in the context of work we've done in the past, but for larger scale projects, not for all of these other projects. So I don't think anybody will be surprised by these 11 points and principles. The question is, are we committed or just interested in these reforms? And I think commitment is certified through a trailer bill process where we can focus all our energies in the framework of a budget, because that $180 billion is attached to our capacity to deliver on that promise and promotion, and these reforms are essential in that respect.
And we met with legislators all over.
And we've been meeting, and I don't think there's a legislator left that Antonio hasn't met 4 or 5 times. And again, I just cannot impress upon you more, this is in the spirit of partnership with the leaders in the legislature that have really been incredible in the last few years in this space.
Hi, Governor. Ashley Zavala with KCRA 3. So speaking of progress, so I guess the central piece of this, limiting the amount of time that these lawsuits can be held up by CEQA, when does that go into effect, or when could that happen?
Yeah, I mean, that's one of many things. And look, that you're referring to a judicial review process, so we want to cap it at 270 days. I mean, 9 months, you can have a kid, okay? I mean, that's a long time. You may even have twins after 9 months. And I say that with respect and love. I mean, it's a framework that we passed and engaged in the past, and it's one very familiar. And I think, beyond that, you start getting an abuse process, and delays become denials. We have a lot at stake. It's not just $180 billion. The reason I can lay claim to some historic construct is it's not only the baseline $180 billion that we've identified, which is on par with where we were in the 50s and 60s, but also the competitive grant opportunities, if we get our act together and get these projects truly shovel-ready, that we can draw down from the federal government. It's hundreds of billions of dollars that's at stake, that's going to other states that are moving more aggressively. So we've got to move in that respect, and that judicial review component's part of it. So we want to save time. I mean, in some respects, some of that work it saves us up to 3 years on a project. 3 years just right there. The administrative records reforms, hundreds of thousands of pages of unnecessary legal documents, hundreds of millions of dollars in savings on some of these projects. And I'll be honest with you, as someone who's all in on the high-speed rail in this state and is struggling to try to figure out how to, balance our prioritization of certain projects in relationship to it, and inherited 3-4 years ago, rather, a project that wasn't necessarily the one that we were promoting a decade prior. All I can think about is what if? What if we had these principles before we laid out that project? Where that project would have been today. I may not have had to drive down here today. I may have been on that rail and made a short drive over to Patterson and into this project. So this is this is a big deal, and it's long overdue, and we think appropriate. And as I say, judicial review is just one of many components.
Okay, you answered actually 2 of my questions. So
Good.
my final question is just, I guess on the timeline, and I know this is a processy question, but is there an urgency clause attached to any of this? I mean, how soon could these provisions actually go into effect?
I mean, I got my principal ledge leader, but Gail, why don't you come up here and answer that, because each one has a different component and part. But broadly, perhaps you can answer more specifically on which side.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, you got to. I'm putting you on the spot.
I
you
know. Thanks, guys, and thanks, Ashley.
Yeah.
So as trailer bills, they become effective immediately. So that's our goal, that we can actually start the process right now to get them moving. So the governor referred to all 11. So as soon as we have the 270-day provision, then we can start moving right away. Does that answer your question?
Yes,
And so
got
for
it.
every one of those, the sooner we get them through the budget process, the sooner they become law, as soon as the governor signs them.
Okay.
And the sooner they get to work. Just remember, that's the bottom line here.
I think, Jay, I think he's running for your job. I mean, I like it. I like it. You got it. It's good.
I came out of labor.
Hi, good morning, Governor. Morgan Reiner with CBS 8 San Diego, ABC 10 Sacramento. You mentioned a lot of different infrastructure, roads, bridges, reservoirs. I'm just wondering why housing wasn't included in this.
Well, we've done a lot of work on housing. This time last year, we were all together and some historic housing legislation we did in San Francisco. We signed with legislative leaders. Tremendous progress has been made in that space, and as you know, we've compounded that progress in terms of accountability, a new accountability unit that we stood up to have oversight of local planning decisions, and of course, we haven't been shy about lawsuits as it relates to the housing element and RHNA goals and the like. And so we feel like we've made tremendous progress in this space. That said, as it relates to components of this legislation, there are secret reforms that will benefit housing on the administrative record side, on other sides related to permitting. We also have many bills that are currently pending in the legislature, which I encourage you to take a look at, that are currently now well along the process that I look forward to signing, that will also advance our nation-leading efforts to finally reconcile the need to get housing produced here in the state of California.
Can I just add for a second? The Infrastructure Investment Jobs Act includes transportation, energy, water, and broadband. They didn't include housing, so it wasn't on the state. Actually, the state and its own $47 billion that you allocated with the legislature does have housing funds, but the feds only included those 4 areas.
Just wanted to clarify those bills that you said you're looking forward to signing, which ones those are, and is that you officially
I will,
backing them?
I will be careful. In broad strokes, I say that at peril of getting caught in the weeds. Remember, we started with 2,600 bills, and so we're processing, but we're very closely engaged with the authors of those of that legislative package, and we're very encouraged by the progress they've made, including as of just a few days ago, where there were some amendments that we helped bridge and support. So a lot of progress is being made in that space.
Good morning, Mr. Governor and Mr. Mayor and Advisor and Senator. Nice to see you. Thank you. It's Eitan Wallace here with Next, our final reporter. Question for you. I know that several times, I believe, former Governor Jerry Brown would used to say that CEQA reform is, I believe, if I'm quoting him right, the Lord's work, just because of how many groups you have to negotiate. Have you heard from like the Sierra Club and other groups? What have you heard from them? How do you feel about your partnerships here?
Well, look, I do recall he had a specific bill he promoted, and he said, this is God's work, and I don't think it got out of committee. And I don't fault the governor for his desire or the effort, but it was a fault line of sorts, and it was a moment that I think was a reflective one for everybody, that we can't just keep saying no. That we need to acknowledge the time value of money, certainty around investments, the ability to get people actually on the project and start to work, and not just promote progress, but to actually deliver it. And so I give the governor a tremendous amount of credit. But you're seeing 10x what he proposed in terms of what we're proposing here today, which is a remarkable testament. Every single person you see behind me. It would not have happened without all of them. This would not have happened without the laborers and the carpenters in OE3 would not have happened without IBEW, wouldn't have happened without their leadership. I cannot impress upon you more how proud I am of them. At the same time, we've worked with the environmental community, to your second point, on many proposals in the past, including some of those reforms as it relates to these larger scale AB, referred to them AB 900 projects. And by the way, they're not just stadiums, they're also large scale transit projects, 7 in particular. And we've worked directly with the environmental community. And we are committed, not interested. There's not take a backseat to no elected official in this country, particularly at gubernatorial level, in terms of my desire for a low carbon green growth future and to radically change the way we produce and consume energy. And we've got the receipts to back that framework up. And so I care deeply about what the environmental community believes and thinks. But at the same time, I care deeply about the progress we're promoting here today, and we're going to get this thing done.
Thank you. And final question for you is just about, I want to give you an opportunity to share a little bit about this project here in Patterson. I know we're going to put some footage of you touring it. What is this? How is this going to contribute?
You got the big boss right here. He's going to get upset if I mischaracterize anything, so you can talk about it in closing.
So thank you so much. I just want to add, it's an honor not just to see, it brings me so much pleasure not just to see these projects come online, but to be graced with the presence of this supportive community, the labor force that is here, Governor Newsom, the Senator, Mayor Villaraigosa. Grateful to be here, but this project is creating about 300 jobs over an 18 to 20 month period. It's an investment of over $500 million in California's clean energy future, and it will be fully online by the middle of next year. And I'm excited to see it come together. And it's been a long work in progress since 2011, and here we are today, finally seeing it come to fruition. So it's an honor to be here. Thank you so much.
And that's 300 jobs. That's 300 jobs of the 400,000 jobs that we're talking about. I mean, this is an incredible effort. And, you know, I got to say it, Governor. You said break the glass. That's what we're doing. We're treating climate change like an emergency, that it is. And this effort to accelerate these projects is the key to that. And by the way, you're sending me to D.C. next month to get CEQA and NEPA together. Like, why should we have CEQA, the most rigorous environmental review in the country, and then got to do NEPA, afterwards, adding 2 or 3 years? We want to consolidate that the way we did in LA, the way Caltrans has done on some projects. We want to do that on as many projects as we can. Accelerating those projects means accelerating good middle-class jobs.
Right. That's right. All right, everybody. Thank you all very, very much for coming out here. Thank you guys for all taking the time. Amazing on a Friday.